Depending on whether or not you play video games, which may or may not be a thing with you, you may have heard about this series of events revolving around Sweet Baby Inc. Sweet Baby Inc. is basically a group of extortionists that make threats to companies in order to force inclusivity, diversity, and just general woke garbage and push them into the games.
We work very hard to get marginalized talent into the industry, to protect them the way that we would want to have been protected, to lift them up, and to get them into an industry where they're too often shut out. And basically, I think to take over in the hopes that some really dope people will be able to lead into kind of a new era for an industry that's been kind of, the same way too long.
They've literally called gamers babies. That's why they're called Sweet Baby. And I'm paraphrasing here. They want to turn angry gamers into sweet gamers. And people became aware of this because of how terribly the game Off the Justice League performed. A game that was published by Warner Brothers, and it is doing terribly. It's already 40% off, and they lost something like $100 million on it. And on top of that, there is a Steam group now called Sweet Baby Inc. Detected. It's led by a Brazilian guy who's making waves and talking to such luminaries as Asmongold and the Quartering. And so there's a lot of hoopla revolving around what's been going on. And in some circles, this incident involving Sweet Baby Inc., this company, is seen as Gamergate 2.0. For those of you who are not aware, Gamergate took place 10 years ago. It involves Zoe Quinn, this woman who copulated with multiple gaming journalists to improve the results of the games that she was developing. Such amazing titles as Depression Quest, among others. And well, you get the picture. Corruption in gaming journalism was revealed at the time. And now people are calling this incident with Sweet Baby Inc. Gamergate 2.0. The circumstances are not really identical. They're not even terribly similar. There's some overlap, but that's basically the context of this. A lot of people have been saying, well, you know what this means? It means that wokeness is finally coming to an end, specifically in the entertainment industry. You have really famous, well-informed people like Mark Kern, who was instrumental in creating World of Warcraft, the original, saying that they're running out of money, they can't do this anymore, and the only reason why they're doing this is because it was cheap to do this to begin with, which is a bit strange. And then you have other people that will talk about BlackRock, which is an investment company that holds something like $10 trillion in client assets and has an astonishing amount of money just for their own as well. And they seem to be implicated in funding a lot of this, which is to say there's this strange paradox in the gaming industry whereby people put out woke garbage, it doesn't do particularly well. The customers, the players really don't like it, and they keep on doing it again and again and again. And if you were to use your logic, you'd think, well, any normal business model would fail if you kept on putting out products that customers hated because the customers are required to keep the business alive and going. Obviously, basic logic, which is where BlackRock allegedly comes in. Now, there is the greater topic, which is really what I want to focus on, of this notion of peak wokeness, this idea that we have reached the very tippy top of wokeness and we will now be plummeting down and it's basically going to improve over the next couple of years. I have to offer on this point a considerable amount of skepticism. And I'm not just talking about games here. This encompasses everything. And that's why it's important to talk about wokeness in a general sense as opposed to just the gaming industry. It may be the case in entertainment, specifically in the gaming industry, that the losses, for example, with Off the Justice League, $100 million plus, were so catastrophic, so insane, that they simply can't continue that. Whoever is ultimately investing in this, and in this case, I think Warner Brothers was the company doing all the work here, but it remains to be seen. Just because you have a Steam group, just because people are talking about it, and people have been talking about this, as you know, for an ungodly number of years, well, that doesn't mean anything's going to change. And if you were to believe in the entertainment industry that BlackRock is funding all these woke groups like Sweet Baby Inc. to tame the gamers and wokeify everything, then given how much money they have, not necessarily in their assets, but they have hundreds of billions of dollars on their own, well, they have enough money to keep this going for another 40 or 50 years if they so choose. It's not exactly clear to me. And there isn't any hard evidence that BlackRock is funding everything in this case. It's more suggestive than anything else. But if we move past this notion of entertainment and gaming, which I know not everyone plays games, and look at wokeness as a broader phenomenon, I think it's clear that we are nowhere in sight of peak wokeness. If we look at wokeness as a broad set of beliefs that informs culture, politics, institutions, and so on. Sure, there might be rebellions in the gaming community, and sure, maybe some companies and publishers will cut back. There have been a number of studios that have emerged over the last couple of years because they were purportedly tired of wokeness, although in some cases they just didn't like the corporate overreach. It's not clear. But what about universities? Well, if you talk to people that used to be at universities, whether as students and even professors, many of them say you have to burn the universities to the ground. They are so irrevocably unhealable in this regard that there's nothing you can do. You have to burn them to ashes and start anew, much as the phoenix would. And then, of course, you look at broader culture, including games, but also institutions. I'll give you an example. Recently, Joe Biden was addressing the unfortunate murder of a Georgia woman by an illegal alien, a man who originally came from Venezuela. He was caught saying illegal alien or something to that effect, and then was reprimanded and corrected to say undocumented person. Now, it's hard to imagine a higher office in the United States, or really even in the world, where you say, yeah, this is the president of the United States, whatever his befuddled nature might be. Him reacting to a reprimand by some woke crowdgoer saying, oh, no, you have to call them undocumented persons as opposed to illegal aliens. That is an example of how peak wokeness is not even close to being here. And in the realm of politics, say the Democratic Party in the United States, it's everywhere. I have a friend who works in park restoration, gardening, that kind of thing. He's basically a professional green thumb at this stage. And he was attending a conference about things like invasive species and insects and the damage they might do to certain plants, and basically how do you optimize the growth of plants, how do you optimize the restoration of greenery. And during this conference, which is literally about plants, not humans, not dogs, not cats, plants, they started going off about white privilege and systematic racism in the context of that industry. Now, I submit to you, dealing with plants, flowers, trees, gardening, this has nothing to do with games or entertainment. And yet here we see, as well, the heavy hand of wokeness. It is simply ubiquitous everywhere you go. And yet you have these pundits coming on saying, oh, I think we've reached peak woke. They've been saying that now for, I would say, a goodly 5, maybe even 6 years, at the very least 4 years. Oh, we've reached peak woke. We're past peak woke. Don't worry, things are going to improve from now. Think about the fact that universities, as I just mentioned, are irrevocably damaged. There's nothing you can do for the most part to repair them. They need to be, and this is a direct quote made by several former professors who have become dissidents in this regard, burnt to the ground and renewed. There's even this drive to create this university called the University of Austin, which is supposed to be a non-woke university, not politically affiliated, but a university where you can discuss anything, question anything, and not fear strange woke repercussions. And then you think about the president of the United States being corrected by some random guy in a crowd by using the term illegal alien. No, you have to say undocumented person who happened to murder a citizen of the United States. No, we're not even close to peak woke. And part of the problem, as I've talked about before, is that Zoomers are heavily implicated in this, and they have been imbibing and breathing in the fumes of wokeness for quite some time. And so you're in this situation where the youngest generation that now is graduating university and moving into the professional world, they carry many of these beliefs, especially women. And that's going to last for quite some time. What would be, in my humble opinion, evidence, some evidence that we are at peak woke and it's receding? Well, it would be something to the effect of the president saying, no, the term is illegal alien. He entered the country illegally. He also murdered somebody. Calling somebody an undocumented person doesn't really have the same salience, nor does it convey the same meaning. Although given how befuddled Biden is, it would be difficult to conceive of him saying something like that, but something along those lines. The wokerati being actively rebuked and pushed into the dark corners and shadows where they belong so they can no longer corrupt the culture. Because you have to understand what they've done. You have to think about the entertainment industry. They have done more to foster racism and intolerance than any group in recent decades, collectively, the wokerati. And they've turned us all paranoid. Because it used to be the case that characters would just be in games. Give you an example. Captain Anderson in the Mass Effect trilogy. Important NPC, a mentor to Commander Shepard. Nobody back then, including myself, batted an eyelash and thought, why is Captain Anderson black? No, it didn't matter. He was a cool character. He was a nice NPC. That was it. And that's just one example. You fast forward to the current year, and it's not even clear right now which characters are meant to simply be characters and which are meant to simply be there for the sake of quote-unquote diversity. It's just one example of many. These people are intolerant, they're actual racists, and they ruin everything they touch. And I think the worst thing about all of this is the very real danger they represent. Because as much as I'm a firm believer in the lack of human agency and free will, you still want the people that won the genetic lottery doing the important jobs, i.e. you want meritocracy. You want people who are competent at what they do to do the things that they're competent at. You do not want people to be doing things they're not qualified for. And I'll give you a concrete example of this. Medicine. The University of Pennsylvania has a diversity-based program for their medical school, one of the more prestigious ones in the country, and that's frightening, just because you want to fulfill your ideological charter. What about pilots? Do you want pilots to be diversity hires, or do you want the most competent, skillful ones to be there irrespective of their ethnicity or background? So the problem is, even if there's a tiny dent in entertainment, that's all it is. It's a dent in entertainment. And all the rest of society is unfortunately pervaded by wokeness from every angle you can imagine. From the highest office in the country, the presidency, to people working normal jobs involving park restoration and greenery, to schools, to universities. It is everywhere. So I'll ask again to the people making this claim, where is the peak woke? Well, the answer is it's nowhere, because we're not at peak woke. We've got a very long time to go. And to be perfectly blunt, I'll probably be dead and wokeness will continue. I am deeply skeptical of this claim because I see little to no evidence for it. Anyway, an important topic to cover because you hear all the time about how we've reached peak woke. And I'm not just talking about games, I'm talking about the entirety of society itself. And no, we're not there, not by a long shot. Anyway, as always, thank you for tuning in. Many special thanks to my patrons and donors on PayPal. You guys are the best. You keep the channel alive and going. Without you, all would be dust and ash. As for everybody else, if you can leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. Supposedly helps out the channel, be much appreciated. Until the next time, if I'm still alive, I'll check you out then. May the gods truly watch over you. Bye-bye for now. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.